Hi, thank you everyone, and thank you to Reed Corporate for having us here to present, and hopefully we'll make this quick, punchy and interesting. There's Apollo Hill, and today I'm going to talk to you about how we're working very diligently to make this Australia's next new virgin gold operation. Located in Western Australia, heart of the Eastern Goldfields, key strategic land position on one of Australia's biggest, most prolific greenstone belts for gold. 1,000 square kilometres, other key points on there, 100% owned, lots of good infrastructure, lots of good gold infrastructure as well, road, rail, gas pipelines, and we'll talk about the regional exploration potential on that ground package at the end when we've looked at the deposit. Strengths on there, excellent cash position after the recent raise, an share purchase plan in process at the moment, going very well, I understand, and obviously cash in the bank prior to that. So our register, I think in the pie chart there, heavily institutionalised at quite an early stage, including cornerstone US long technical investors who really see the value in the asset we're developing here. Our project valuation, and depending on which way you look at this, I'll look at it as an opportunity. Highly, our EV per ounce or our company valuation versus the actual project valuation, there's a huge gap there, and that's where the opportunity lies for investors. There's the asset in terms of those of you who know the Perth skyline. I should have probably put the Adelaide skyline on, but it didn't quite work. I think because your shoreline's not quite as straight as ours. But the point there is the thing sticks out at surface. It's a bulk mining asset, and you pretty much see the gold disposition there in what essentially is a very big blob. We'll look at that from the air. At the moment, we're pretty much drill constrained at a gold price there of only 3,300. Arguably a couple of thousand ounces below where we are today. And we will be drilling some deep holes this year, and that diagram is to scale as well in terms of its depth. I'll stop destroying the mic. From the air, that shows that real bulk mining proposition. All our ounces are contained within one single, simple pit, as opposed to some of our peers with similar resource bases. And that really translates into some much better mining economics and development economics and mine scheduling. The strip ratio on that pit, that study pit, is 1.5 to 1, very low strip ratio, which is where our economics really start to differ and differentiate ourselves from other mining operations. So the amount of waste we have to move relative to the amount of ore is very, very low. And even for heap leach deposits, really in that sort of upper quartile, if not upper 10th percentile on a global scale. That's what it looks like in cross-section. Several things there you can see. The low strip, very wide ore zones. You could stand on the pit floor there in places and you'd see nothing but mineralisation for 180 metres. And if you think about the length of this room, that can be mined with some very big equipment. Big equipment really drives those costs down. The one guy sat on the levers, moving his hands on the levers to dig ore out, he's probably 6-7 times more efficient than in most gold mines. And you can really see between the black and light blue shells and the dark blue shells, the recent resource grade we've managed to deliver with only about 10,000 metres of drilling. The other big cost driver here is a very simple, clean, efficient metallurgy. All the gold's contained in quartz, only quartz, easily liberated. There's no carbon, copper, arsenic. There's nothing complicated in this ore. And really what that means is that gold is liberated through crushing alone, and then cyanide in a heap leach scenario really dissolves those grains, and small grains only, quite quickly. So again, an efficient metallurgy which is driving that cost structure down and allows us to process this in a conventional scale on a global sort of scenario. I think 46% of the world's gold is produced by heap leach. That really shows, I suppose, those leach curves, and the key point really there is that irrespective of the grade or rock type we throw at that deposit, we end up with the same predictable recovery. And those high levels, which again translates into easy mining schedule, easily stacking schedule, good leaching, and a consistency of product to the pad. That ended up giving us a study of about 10 million tonnes for 10 years, producing 122,000 ounces from a very sort of elegant operational perspective. Some of the numbers at the bottom there in terms of we discounted our recovery, we doubled our stacking schedule from test work, and really tried to put a very conservative approach and put a lot of integrity around this study. What that looks like in all-in sustaining cost, I think when we published this, I stood up at a presentation in Sydney next to the VanEck Exchange Traded Fund leader, and he talked about a 1,850 all-in sustaining cost for his portfolio. Now that number there at 1,857, I kind of stood up straight after with him and followed that, but we can genuinely say this is a lower cost producer. And we do that because of that big mining equipment, big benches, and because of the heap leach, a processing cost which is probably about $4, $5, $6, even $7 a tonne lower than your mill CIL process. I think it's probably worth mentioning as well, in terms of the margin that creates, our all-in sustaining cost is about $24 a tonne. Pick a gold price of, let's say, I don't know, $1,000, 1,300 below where we are now, 3,700, that probably translates to about $60 a tonne revenue. After recovery, $48 a tonne revenue. $48 minus $24 a tonne is $24 margin. This is a margin volume play. The volume kicks in that this is 10 million tonnes per annum. 10 million times 24 is $240 million free cash flow. This is a strategic size asset with, those kind of cash flows really start producing very rapid payback at even lower gold prices. The economics on the right was where we stood 18 months ago, hand on heart, and felt we could really represent ourselves. The deposit had reached a size where we could put this thing forward. Under that study, some really nice net present values coming back, good bankable metrics. And at that time, we looked at a sensitivity analysis and thought, well, how far could we go? $3,500 an ounce. And we start to look at a $1 billion project, which pays back in just over 1.5 years. So I think the point there is highly leveraged to the gold price, particularly given that volume margin equation that we see in this business. On a global scale, there aren't that many deposits like this particular one here in Australia, so we've juxtapositioned ourselves next to some of the US deposits. The point on that graph is we're there in terms of grade, scale, in terms of tonnes, economies of scale, ounces. Our strip ratio is much lower than some of the deposits on that particular graph. And we've done our homework on our local cost structure as well. We've moved into pre-feasibility. To that end, we've brought a very experienced development team on. We have Caps Cassidy fully appointed now as our contractor right through to definitive feasibility study. They specialise in most of the heap leach deposits in this world, based in Reno, Nevada. This year should see us deliver our inaugural ore reserve, another resource upgrade. We have about 3 drill rigs on site and another 2 arriving, one Monday, one next Friday. Other things on there, I suppose we've been beavering away on our bore field development. There's 4 bore fields being developed and bores in now, actual production. So we're getting this thing ready for production as soon as possible. We have the biggest drill program the company has ever done in progress. I think the white holes on there are the ones that have kind of backed previous resource upgrades. The red ones are the ones we've drilled since the last one in February. And the orange ones are probably being beavered away on as we speak today. So I think we'll see tremendous results flow out of that in the next few weeks, months, even days. Those are some of the results we've seen since the last resource upgrade to 2 million ounces. If I pick on a few there, the numbers on the left are kind of things you'd expect to see at Capricorn's Karlawinda. I think they'd be quite proud and pleased of those intersections. The ones on the right, 89 metres at 0.74, the kind of the dream of heap leach space at the moment is all the mining in the US. That's their kind of head grade, 0.7, so we're seeing big, thick, consistent intersections here for this bulk mining. And then I think there's a 16 at 3 down there, midway on the right. That's in the hanging wall, which is new mineralisation coming into actually within the pit shell. So that's actually helping us to really push the strip ratio down and keep the strip ratio down as we make this thing bigger and better. We will also take the opportunity to be very brave this year and drill some big step-out holes. This thing, I think, is in its infancy in terms of the deposit size. The pit shell on there you're probably looking at is a 30,000 tonne per day pit shell. That's a lot of dirt to move in a day. That hole comes in. The next step in, I suppose, scale for these heap leach deposits is about 45,000 tonnes per day. So we're really looking at moving down those economies of scales and cost efficiencies. Not necessarily last but least, regional exploration. On that map, that's the drill anomaly over our 1,000 square kilometres. That's not geochemistry. There's 16 prospects to date found outside the main deposit, and a couple of them have some real legs. Those drill lines, in a lot of instances, are 600 metres or 1.2 kilometres apart. Even space between the drill lines, we see room for discovery. We're assays pending on about 5,000 metres and another 12,000 metres to go. But it is not impossible, given the terrain we're in, that we could see a brand new discovery which completely sets us apart again. I think if we look at the journey of Gold Road Resources and they had about 2 million ounces in Gruyere. The next 4 million ounces came from that regional land package. So we've always been explorers, we always will be, and I'd watch that space very closely as well. For the big project, pre-feasibility is underway. We should see that delivered this year, which will see that first reserve, a second resource upgrade this year. Obviously a lot of energy with the drill bit. Definitive feasibility is really about putting the detail behind actual costings on our studies and almost like contract costings. And regulatory approvals are well underway to some respect, particularly because we've been looking at a sort of staged development concept. The little pits on there you see are about 1.2 million tonnes. They're about a tenth the size of the full-scale operation and the processing plant we're looking at there. Its potential for a low capital or stage startup journey for the company, and it's about a 100th of the size of the main deposit. And if you look closely at that diagram, you'll probably see a little Land Rover or Toyota in there. A 1 million tonne operation per annum is not bad for any gold deposit, but perhaps it gives you some scale of the big opportunity. That's permitted or being permitted at the moment in terms of our vegetation clearing, mining proposal, and even rehab, which we've got to put in before. The water permits have already been in. We've looked at that bore field development. So really this could give us, the company, an opportunity within the next 12 months to really perhaps accelerate and bring production forward. And that's us in a nutshell.